We are now on season 3 of Black Mirror, and this is episode 1. It's called Nosedive. And it's a nice, cheery episode to get us in the mood for season 3. And I think this is a great way to kick off this season. We ended on a bit of a downer, White Christmas. A good episode, but definitely one that is darker in tone. And this series in general can sometimes get a little too dark, so it's good to have episodes like this that are still making a serious point about technology, in this case, taking on a futuristic social credit system where every interaction you have with someone you can rate on a scale from 1 to 5 stars, which incentivizes you to be nice, or in this case, very, very fake. Like, hi, how you doing? Oh, my name's John, and I just want to say your dress is beautiful. And this one stars Bryce Dallas Howard, who I think is the most famous actress we've had up until this point. She was in a little thing called, I don't know, Twilight. Ever heard of it? And also the M. Night Shyamalan movies, The Village and Lady in the Water. And recently in the Jurassic World trilogy as Claire. So yeah, Bryce Dallas Howard is, as we say, killing it. And she does a great job here as a very attractive but also very fake who just wants to get her social credit score up higher so she can go into the upper echelon of society. And this is very real. I know places like China are trying something like this with a social credit system, but this takes it on in a very Black Mirror type way. So the first thing I thought of when I saw this episode was it reminds me of the movie Pleasantville. It has that artificial fake tone to it, where everything's very flat but colorful. Also, looks like the remake of the Stepford Wives too. Even the clothes she wears looks very uncomfortable. While there's color, it's usually a solid color, and she's buttoned up right into her neck where it looks like she could barely breathe. She moves awkwardly, the other characters move awkwardly, and it's almost like this is a cult that is trying not to appear like a cult, so they're making it a little more hip, but there is no amount of sex appeal here, no amount of flair, no amount of cool shirts like Ed Hardy. Everyone's just in a solid color with the thing buttoned up to her neck, looking like a granny. So, A+ for the set design and costumes. This is exactly what the society acts and feels like. Uptight, people are being fake, trying to be trendy, but also having no amount of style or sex appeal. But it's still very visually pleasing. So everyone in this society has a technology and a mobile device that looks very much like a cell phone, where they can rate every interaction they have with another person on a scale from 1 to 5 stars. So the first ones they show us is someone going to a restaurant and being served. Is the service good? Sure, the service is good. You get 5 stars, and this person's social credit system goes up. Seems like 5 is the most you can get. And Bryce at this point is floating around at 4.2. But that's not the only way that you could raise it. You can also raise it by doing social media posts that get lots of likes and comments. So you're encouraged to put yourself out there and show very positive videos of you petting dogs, making a nice cake, and just being in general positive and helpful to the people around you. Of course, this is not too dissimilar from what real social media is. People do Instagram photos, and apparently everyone's on vacation 24 hours a day because lots of people's Instagrams are only vacation photos. I follow this girl. Her name's Laura Frazier. She supposedly does like prank videos. I mean, she did them for the Daily Dropout, but if you look at her Instagram, she's just on vacation all the time. I have no idea what the hell this person is doing. She apparently has a job and a YouTube channel where she does prank videos, but you would never notice that. Apparently she's just flying on private jets to Bali, then hopping a little skipper plane into Singapore, and then riding a llama into Egypt. So yeah, this is obviously a very artificial representation of someone's life, and I'm just using Laura Frazier as an example because she's particularly hilarious. She's also super hot. So this social credit system makes a lot of sense. As I said, they're doing something similar like that in China. And raising your social credit score through social media posts, yeah, people do these things to get clicks, to get likes, a lot of times to hawk a product, and then to eventually be monetized. Because who wouldn't want to be monetized? In this case, Lacey, who I'm just going to refer to as Bryce Dallas Howard because I like using their real names, wants to raise her rating from a 4.2 to a 4.5 in order to get this luxury apartment in this nice community of other people who have scores of 4.5 to 5. Because you don't want to mess with the scumbags that are like at 1 or 2. Those guys suck and are looked down upon. Once again, just like in real life, rich people want to live in rich communities. They don't want to live in poor communities. They want to live in communities of people that look like them, that have the same culture as them. That's just kind of the way things tend to go. And this is putting kind of an ugly face on it since she runs into some people, especially this truck driver we'll see later, who has a 1.4, and she immediately thinks, oh my goodness, a 1.4, this must be like a serial killer, and she's actually pretty nice. So to show that you shouldn't judge someone just because they're a dirty truck driver. But we are going to judge people. You would judge people too. And I would. In fact, I'm judging you right now for not hitting that like button. So Bryce Dallas Howard gets an invitation from her friend Naomi, who is a very in shape, good looking, and most importantly, she has a 4.8 on the social credit system, who invites her to be her maid of honor for her wedding.
Would you be my maid of honor?
They're not super close, they were childhood friends, but for some reason Naomi is giving her this chance. And she knows when she goes to this wedding, it's going to be full of other people with social credit scores of 4.5 or higher. And if you get rated by someone who has, let's say, a 4.8 and you're at a 4, that's going to rate higher than if you're at a 4 and you get rated by someone who has like a 2, because they're lesser than you. It's like in an RPG. If you fight a boss that's really, really difficult, you're going to get more experience points. But if you just go around in the woods and just start whacking squirrels in the head that take like 2 hits, you're going to get less experience points. So you want to get more experience points. And how you do that is hanging around with the socialites, the rich people, the nice circles, the rich circles. And that's how you really raise your credit score. They actually tell her in this, a guy who gives advice on how to do this, he tells her she's just getting rated at like restaurants, and that's really not going to do anything. Just having the wait staff go 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. But if Leonardo DiCaprio gives you a 5-star, oh man, that's way more experience points. And this system does seem somewhat realistic, something that could happen in a society, but they do a good job of showing the downfalls of this. Not just that everyone around you is fake, but as we see in this episode, she actually ends up running into a lot of misfortune that really isn't her fault. She's rushing out of her house and she accidentally bumps into her neighbor who has a high credit score. And so the neighbor gives her like a 1 rating because she bumped into her. She tries to catch an airplane, and what do you know? The airplane is already booked and she has to try to get another one, and they can't find her another one. So she gets a little frustrated because honestly, who likes ever dealing with airlines? And so they start rating her down. And so these things keep happening that really aren't exactly her fault. She's kind of acting how a normal person would act, but she just gets hit and dinged and dinged and dinged and dinged. Kind of showing that your social credit score could go down if you accidentally get in a car accident. Now that person's going to be pissed at you. If maybe you're trying to be nice to someone, but they think you're slighting them. If you get a little annoyed, because who hasn't got annoyed at customer service at some point in their lives? Every person can hit you and hit you and hit you and hit you. And so we get kind of a comedy halfway through where she just gets dinged and dinged and dinged off stuff that really isn't her fault. And I think this episode is great. This is an easy 9 out of 10. The only demerit that I would ding this episode with is there's a part where she gets picked up by a truck driver because she's having all this misfortune. She misses her flight, so she decides to drive, but then her car is too old and isn't allowed to charge at the electric charging lot. So she gets picked up with this truck driver, and this scene just goes on so long. It goes on for 10 minutes of them talking. You kind of get the idea that they're making the point. This truck driver who has a 1.4 is not really that bad of a person, but just kind of speaks her mind and doesn't really care if people give her 1 stars. This point is made in the first 2 minutes of their conversation, and then it continues for another 10 minutes. It's a waste of time, and they should have cut that one down. And it's the only part of this episode that really drags, because up until that point, it's absolutely amazing, but it's not a huge demerit. It probably stops this from being a 10, because I will be giving some episodes a 10. Maybe something like San Juniper. This is also a very female-centric episode. All the main characters are female, and I think it pulls it off very well. Oh, and about that wedding. Well, she does eventually arrive there. Where the episode ends, she goes to jail and starts insulting the prison inmate across from her. I think they're trying to show that sometimes it's cathartic to actually be your real self and say what's on your mind. They have all this pent-up emotion trying to be nice that she sees her cellmate and just starts insulting him, and he insults her back, and they kind of have a fun time. You know, just like Josh and your friends. They're like, hey, Bob, I noticed you're getting a little bald spot here. Oh, let me pat you on the tummy. You've gained a few pounds, haven't you? Oh, you know it, buddy. Except they go a little deeper than that. And this is the first episode to be on Netflix after they picked up the series, and the production values are a bit higher. Even this prison scene, which only lasts for a few minutes, you can tell they took a lot of time with it. Sliding glass cases, and they'll also show a lot more establishing shots of her house, of what the environments look like, the charging stations. This is something they didn't do as much in the previous episodes. In fact, this one reminds me of 15 Million Merits, because it has some of the same aesthetics, but 15 Million Merits did very few establishing shots or locations. This one has a lot more and feels much more like a real movie, but it's really not the production that puts this in the higher echelon. But also, this is a lot more Americanized since they're using American actors now. Bryce Dallas Howard is not British, and so it appeals to a wider audience. Some of the British slang that I had to look up, especially when they talk about their pallywhackers and their tolics, don't translate here, and it's hard to figure out what they're saying sometimes. Sarcasm doesn't always translate, but this one translates, I think, a lot more, especially because I'm American. The acting is a step above. As I mentioned before, Bryce Dallas Howard is the most famous actress they've had up until this point, but her friend Naomi is played by Alice Eve, who I first saw in Entourage, where she played the character Sophie, a writer for Vanity Fair who ends up marrying Vince. But she's also been in Men in Black 3, Star Trek Into Darkness, Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb. Actually, I haven't seen that one yet. And it's overall pleasant to look at and plays the uptight socialite role perfectly. And the teleplay is done by Michael Shore and Rashida Jones, who have some amazing credentials as well. And Rashida Jones is an actress, but also a writer. She's more known for her writing, but she did act in movies like The Social Network, and was one of the co-writers for Toy Story 4. And she acted in The Office as Karen, and Parks and Recreation as Ann Perkins. So she's quite talented. And the director of this episode is Joe Wright, who directed the 2005 Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley. And you know what? After reading that, I realized, yeah, this kind of does look like Pride and Prejudice. This is exactly the type of director you'd want for this episode. So we get an all-star staff, a higher budget, more, dare I say, quote-unquote, family-friendly content, well, less embarrassing content, and overall Nosedive is going to get a 9 out of 10. It's great. You should check it out. Now we're going to look at some reviews. What do the peoples on the internet have to say about this episode? Are they disappointed? Do they want something darker? Okay, so this person gives it a 9 out of 10. Satiric sci-fi message we need now. That's now, 2025. Still 2025. I've shown this episode to so many friends, I can practically recite it from memory. Why? Because it's a message. Everyone who ever uses Yelp, TripAdvisor, Facebook, Twitter, Grindr, TMI, Tinder, IMDb ratings, practically everyone these days needs to hear, especially the people on Grindr. The message is proceed with caution when you think everyone and everything should be rated, and that you too are qualified to do so because you know how to run a restaurant. You know how to cure pancreatic cancer. You know how to produce a television series. Okay, well, this is one of the top rated comments. I think it's a little confusing. However, they make kind of a good point. I think the point they're trying to make is that there's people that will be rating you that aren't really qualified to be rating you. Once again, someone could possibly misinterpret one of your hilarious jokes, like has happened to me 1,000 times before, and they can give you a 1 rating. And as this episode shows, she starts getting 1 ratings for things that aren't her fault. It's not her fault her rental car did not have the correct connector to charge it. This person gave it a 6 out of 10. Great concept and production values. Bloated result. Oh boy, a bad review. So the point they make here is that they think the episode is too long. Now, pretty much every Black Mirror episode is at least 45 minutes long. I think the shortest one so far is the Waldo moment, which is like 45. This one's like 52 minutes long. So they say Rod Serling observed that he loved the old 30-minute episodes of Twilight Zone and hated when he was forced to produce a 60-minute version. This is not the Twilight Zone. He felt that he could say everything that he wanted to say in 30 minutes, and the longer time just made the show feel bloated. And so it was with Nosedive. There's 30 minutes of brilliance in here, and another 30 minutes of enough already. That's too bad. It would be great if someone could pare this back to its essence and lose all the excesses in the later scenes, each of which goes on for 2 to 3 times as long as appropriate to make the point. Now, I think the only time that happens is in the truck driving section that I mentioned. It is true the first 30 minutes and the later 25 minutes or so are different because it's setting up the scene where they show you how this rating system works, and then it turns into kind of a rom-com, dude, where's my car? Planes, trains, and automobiles, where she has to travel to this location in a very short amount of time and a bunch of wacky stuff that starts happening, like Rat Race. But I think both work well together. They set it up that she has to go to this wedding, has a lot of misfortune going to this wedding, hangs out with like this hippie cult, can't get her car to charge, and then gets to the wedding. So I disagree with this, but sure. But overall, this has an 8.0 rating, so still a good one. Next up is episode 2 of season 3. We're flying by with Black Mirror because I only have a couple episodes per season, so it's easy to cover the seasons. Kind of takes them a long time to make these episodes, and it definitely shows. Next up is Playtest. That's about video games, and Charlie Brooker gives a love letter to people like me who are Resident Evil fans, where a guy playtests this new VR survival horror game, and it's his attempt, I guess, at a horror episode, and I think it's quite good, and we'll talk about it. And check out our playlist for all the other shows we've covered, Monsters, Fear Itself, Tales from the Dark Side, Mystery Science Theater 3000, Pet Shop of Horrors, and Cowboy Bebop. Thanks a lot.